So we got some great new information about the PTS Phase 2 or Phase 3 that just came out. This is great. Now most of the stuff is pertaining to PvP. Now the damages and all that, that's just going to be for both PvE and PvP. This is one reason why I try not to go about anything of the actual damage, because what a lot of people don't understand is sustained is not in PvP. Only base damage as well as burst DPS is in PvP. PvE has burst and sustained damage because you can honestly land more shots on targets because they don't move. This is why PvPers don't have to worry about this stuff. But they also sit here and talk about things like the LMG, how they were going to get all this damage across all LMGs, and then they go and revert all this stuff back. This is one reason why I don't try to do anything for the PTS. But with all this information, these are great things for PvP. Again, this Project Resolved is for the PvP community. And we can prove that with what they just said and what they gave us, which is basically Bezerk coming back. This is great! Now, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of your time on this video. I'm going to try to break these down as short as possible. But the new gear, which is basically this right here, is armor on kill and extra health. So they're actually making health more viable. But this piece right here is going to give you an extra skill tier. In short, by having that extra skill tier, you could actually put on things like heals to heal yourself up. But that's not what it's about. The perfect explosive delivery is to increase the skill's strength, or to increase what the skill can do. Same with tamper-proof, because as long as you have these, it's going to get better. So the more of them you have, is going to get even stronger, which is going to allow the shock and tamper-proof. Now, if this is going to be fixed in PvP, because tamper-proof does not work in PvP, that might actually make it a little bit more beneficial. But the skills tier of damage also increase, so we should see something about this maybe making some type of effect later on, but mostly this is only for PvE right now that we can foreseeably see. So not really great for anything for PvP, but good for PvE. Again, if it benefits something, it benefits something, but we're going to call it exactly how it is. Now, any OG player for PvP knows exactly what this is. This is Bezerk, ladies and gentlemen. This is Aegis. It has come back to us as Bezerk. It is no longer called Bezerk, it is called Stoic. But the pieces give even more health, which now also, and I'll get into later on, why 511 is probably going to be the most go-to piece to have on here, because it's going to basically give you now plus 70 health, plus an extra 30, because 511 jumped up to 30 on one piece, you would have 100% more health, giving you more survivability, plus the total armor of 15%, and possibly putting on a piece of, say, Perfect Clutch on the backpack, which would be the Seska. That's going to give you the total armor and the armor regen that you're going to need. It's still giving you damage resistance on this, and at the exact same time, as long as you have a decoy, something shoots your decoy, or like I tried to show you, if you stand in behind your decoy and let something else shoot it, you get more stoic. So basically dropping a decoy and hiding behind it and letting players shoot at it while you shoot them is going to give you more towards your stoic. Now, as for the backpack and the chest piece, those may not be great for PvP because it's only a 1%, but again, we could be wrong until the testing is done. But as for the talent, this is basically Bezerk Clutch come back. This also could be because there's other updates about this, with them talking about, Adrenaline Rush and Intimidate, basically because of what they're fixing with Intimidate. This could make a huge comeback for those because they're giving you the more stacks later on. But we'll get into that later. Now, as for exotics, this one here just looks like the one talent where if you're in cover, it gives you more stability and accuracy on everything. But this here is going to allow you to put that on to where you can trade off that chest piece and then put on something, say, for more damage. So, a great set of exotic, probably not, but it does allow you to, say, trade out for LMGs. Let's say you want to trade out the contractors and put on more damage. You could put a piece of Petrov for your chest piece instead and put on, say, glass cannon, allowing you to do hip fire and recoil damage. Again, we'll see how this one plays out, but these exotic gloves probably not going to be too great for players. But again, could be wrong, could be great. We don't know, but we'll find out because again, things can change. Now on to exotic weapons. This one here is a rifle. This one basically is an Achilles pulse, ladies and gentlemen. A weapon with Achilles pulse. It is not like the other exotic rifle, the one that just basically gives you more crit chance after hitting something. No, this is while scoped, the weapon will highlight a random section on each enemy. And it's going to deal 75% weapon damage to those highlighted body sections. So as long as you can land your shot in those sections, you're going to get some massive damage. Now this one here could be deadly, and I mean deadly, in PvP. Because if you're able to land your said shots, you get straight weapon damage on those specific sections. The question is, what type of rifle is this going to be on? If it's on anything like an M1A, that's going to have the highest damage in game, and being able to hit those shots with that, yeah, that's going to take boomerang out of the equation, because as long as you can land your shot in those specific shots, this is going to be probably the strongest rifle in the game. Now for another exotic, this one here literally just looks like we just threw on some kind of exotic and said, here you go, enjoy. Because hitting an enemy applies a stack. Stacks are shared between players. At 10 stacks, the enemy will forcefully target the last player to apply a stack of 5 seconds. Stacks deplete every 5 seconds. Basically, I don't see how this is going to affect PvP, because if you're just fighting other players, am I going to be able to put that onto a player, and then when they shoot, the bullet's going to go to the nearby friendly of theirs? Because if not, that's not going to make anything. And plus, at the same time, if it only lasts for 5 seconds, that means I'm going to have to target, especially in PvE, like Chongas or something like that, like named Chongas, to make them go fight something else. But even still, it only applies for 5 seconds. So, not very long to get any kind of damage out. Again, this one here just looks like a wasted exotic at this point. Now, I said in one of my videos, I talked about how I would love to see an M16A2 rifle make a comeback, and they go and do this. Because I saw that the M16A2, with the damages they were offering, was going to make a huge comeback. I called it in one of my videos, and looky here, we have something for the M16A2, but the talent doesn't make any sense. Because unless you're using a decoy, especially for PvE, that's the only way for them not to target you, which would allow you to do the weapon damage. Don't get me wrong, but this is going to make a huge comeback for that gun because it shoots a 3-round burst. So, how does this going to affect PvP? Would be the same thing as you putting on, say, a decoy, standing behind it, letting someone shoot at it, or when someone's not able to see you, basically doing a pulse resistant type build, you could then take that and hit those players for 60% damage, making rifles a huge comeback, especially with this one because it's a 3-round burst, to land on players and do some serious damage as long as they are not able to see you or targeting something else, especially like a decoy in PvE. So this is going to make a huge comeback for that specific weapon. And we also have the other talents, as you can see right here on some other weapons. M700, great sniper rifle, and the extra talent. So there you go. Now, as for Conflict and Dark Zone, not much has changed, but they're just removing the Conflict spawn point, or the turrets from the Conflict spawn points, and the ability to go rogue is going to be a little bit faster for the Dark Zone. Great changes from what I understand, but they were needed. Now this one's going to be a little long, ladies and gentlemen, because the Doctor Home is now going to be target killed versus target headshot targeted. They are making sure that you can at least get that. As for PvP, the fireworks show from the Festive Delivery has basically made PvP almost unplayable. They have tried to fix it, and if you've seen it, I'm giving a shout out to Mr. Cryptonymous. He's the one who actually showed an in-depth detail of what was causing a bunch of issues. Very good video, please go check that out. But this right here needs to be fixed. So they've changed, if you haven't noticed, the 20 meter to 10 meters, thinking that that's going to help. Hopefully this fixes it. I pray to God it does. As for the Unbreakable, it is being reverted back to 50% from 55%. Now, from what I understand, the original chest piece, which would just be regular Unbreakable, was at somewhere around 45. They upped it, now they're dropping it back down. Because the perfect Unbreakable, which was on the Badger Tough, was at 50%. They jumped that up. So I have a question about this right here. I don't understand why it's being dropped like this. It's just a tiny, minute amount. Doesn't really make any sense. Now, as for system corruption, we are getting a boost to this to allow you to get more damage, because you could never get a full stack on system corruption when you pop the med kit. So now it's giving 2% damage for those blue cores. As for Intimidate, as you can see here, Intimidate is also getting a boost. That is a great benefit for it, which makes it more viable to be able to get the damage out, which could actually affect that other piece when we have, again, Intimidate and Adrenaline Rush. But we're going to see how these play out, because again, these can change at any moment. Now, as we've said before, all these things have changed. As you can see, the AKM was actually going to be nerfed down. They're boosting it back up. Some of these other ones are getting a boost. As for the CTAR and Rail Splitter, these are just going to get a magazine size. And I swear to God, I cannot believe I read a comment that the F2000 was somehow or another going to get to 40-meter damage range when it's not. It's only going to get a 50 RPM in mag size. I don't know how some of these guys miss this stuff, but again, if you ask, I will show it to you. It's right here. As for all these other ones, they're not getting anything more than RPM boost. Some of the exotics that we saw before, they're going to keep everything else, but these are just the change to all of these other assault rifles. So yes, some of the weapons that we've talked about before, they're still going to be OP because of the burst damage, especially for PvP. As for sustained damage or talents, other things like that, you can't compare them unless you actually compare them to something similar. So we're going to have to do full testing on this stuff when it releases to get actual accurate information and not opinionated information. As for the LMGs, we all saw that they were all going to get a 10% boost. They have changed everything about LMGs. As you can see right here, certain ones are getting a 10, certain ones are actually just getting a 20. As for most of them, they are getting a 20% increase. But the blue screen is getting a 10, as you can see right here. And the Iron Lung, because it does status, it is only going to get a 10% increase. So while most of these are going to get a 20, pretty much all but these two that I just listed, as you can see right here, are only going to get a 10% increase. This is why I don't trust anything from Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, blah, 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 until it actually comes into the game to make sure this is what we do get. Now, I called it before with the M16, so I'm going to call it again with this. Now, if you can tell that the Grudge and the CMG Banshee are getting a 5% weapon damage and a 50% RPM. If you didn't notice, I want y'all to take a look at the MP7 or the swap change. These right here are probably the most underrated ones, because you can see we're not seeing anything for the Vector or anything like that, right? Because they're not going to mess with those. But the MP7 is also now going to get a 5% weapon damage and a 50% RPM. So those two right there are probably going to be, in a way, important to take a look at. That's all I'm going to say, because even though they do lack in some areas, these can be really beneficial. Now again, we go on to rifles. If you take a look, this is the one I was trying to say. The M16 or the Whisperer are getting a 30% weapon damage increase. The Whisperer is also going to allow for a 60% damage increase if they're not targeting you. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a 90% weapon boost to that specific weapon, and it is a 3-round burst. That is a huge damage increase for that specific type of weapon. Now, is it going to be a meta or a must-use? Probably not. We don't know, again, because these damages could change. So if they were to stay the same as what they're showing right now, that one weapon alone could make a huge comeback into the game. Again, would you be using it versus, say, an M1A? Probably not, because again, that weapon could also still get that extra piece on there, which would be 40%, but still it's going to make a change to where if you want to land 3 shots at one time, there you go. So again, keep an eye out for that. Go find you one and be ready with it. Now, as for marksman rifles, pretty much all of these, they're getting some type of weapon damage. They're trying to increase their actual weapons damage, but some of them are actually increasing their optimal range. This is important because most of these have already a very high optimal range. So this is actually going to allow players, because the one problem that we've always faced was being able to reach out past the 80 meters, because at 82 meters, I believe, or maybe it was 85 meters, you could no longer do damage to players or NPCs because they were just outside of that range. But the farthest you could actually shoot and land a shot is supposed to be in the game at around 100 meters. Now, this is going to supposedly increase this by a little bit to get to about 90 meters. So we're still not going to be able to reach the max, which is 100, but still, this is where it's coming in, where they're increasing it a little bit so these actual marksman rifles do more damage. But this is what's kind of concerning me. They even say later on that the Mantis was giving too much damage, but we have a 15% weapon damage increase. So that's kind of contradictory. Now, with these extra pieces right here, I want y'all to take a look. The 511 is going to give us more health. That is a huge, and I mean a huge increase right there, because 30% plus the other 70 from that new brand set, or gear set I should say, is going to give you 100% more health. Then on top of that, you get 15% total armor. 15%. Most of these are only going to give you about 5%, like Badger Tough if you look right here. So then if you put on the perfect clutch on your backpack and say have a 511 chest piece with, say, Obliterate, Unbreakable, whatever you prefer, I would actually say Obliterate on your chest piece, you could then have max health of an extra 100%, having 15% total armor, and then when you get a kill or something like that, clutch kicks in to give you back your actual armor because you have 15%. But then there's other pieces like some of this right here. As you can see, for the Empress International, they said they were going to reduce the skill damage by 20%. Then this right here, which is skill damage of 10%, was 20 because they increased it back. It is now back to 10% after having two pieces. So why that change? Again, this is what doesn't make any sense to me. Now, it also gives you more explosive resistance. As you can see, 25%. So they're trying to give you back something. As you can see, status effects, which was 10%, is now 15 on the Wyvern. So while they take away from one, they give you a little bit back. So they take away, say, 20%, and they give you back 5. Or they take away 20% and they give you back 10. So they're still going to give you back skill damages of some sort. So don't freak out. But then the biggest change right here that nobody is probably going to notice, but it's a huge increase, is the Seska. Take a look at the Seska, ladies and gentlemen, 3-piece, 90% health. This is why I was talking about the Seska stuff, because you're going to get a bunch of health. So they're trying to make health viable. So this begs a question, are they actually going to change the clutch part to give you back health like this and properly, where you don't have to get a kill anymore to proc it? If so, this is going to make some of these pieces like this actually work for the health now, which has been useless ever since they messed with this stuff. But again, as you can see, we get some other extra bonuses from these other pieces. So great news and overall. Now, as for this, I have to say this is a good thing. This is going to prevent anybody from doing like the old school chest swap, especially for Heartbreaker. Heartbreaker is one that a lot of people don't realize. You can stack up all this blue armor and then swap away one piece, instantly swap it back, and restack up that blue armor for survivability. Is it great for PvP? It can be very effective in the right hands. Is it a meta? Probably not, but it's still something that is going to stop players from taking off these pieces and putting it on and stopping other bugs. So this is great news that they're at least taking the time to go, okay, we need to make sure we stop this before it ever becomes something toxic or something that could ruin the game. So they're actually taking steps in the PvP area to fix these kinds of stuff. So again, all this is for PvP, and it's probably going to make a lot of PvE only content creators a little bit mad because they're not getting as much stuff as the PvP community is, because again, it's Project Resolve to resolve PvP issues. So thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you liked the video and information and enjoy. I will see you in the game, and GG's.